If you go back to the image where there's an invention and then the invention at some point is given over to the machine of innovation in the firm, uh, typically if you're talking about something like a pharmaceutical innovation or agricultural or material science, you end up bringing several hundred people to bear on developing the project. So what's important? I think the most important thing at the level of the firm is to have people who are really looking across the horizon and asking all the questions that you need to ask to develop and protect this innovation and bring it to the market. So you have people looking at the regulatory environment. What are our challenges? What are our opportunities? You can use regulation creatively to create a barrier to entry to your competitors. What is the competitive environment? What are the gold standards? You need to understand the societal context into which you're bringing the product. So all of those things are in play, and typically in a large corporation, you've got people in various parts of the corporation that have expertise in these different areas. And the real challenge is to figure out a way to bring them all together so that you have processes in place so that all those questions get asked and vetted.
Len, you've started a series of companies. What's that? How does the company interact with the innovator?
Well, I usually, when I started the companies, I ran them, so we got along great. But eventually you're acquired, and when you're acquired by a big company, and it's a whole different environment. Now, we were just acquired by a Japanese pharmaceutical company, and very, very nice people. But you try and do something, and they want to talk to you first. They want to meet with you. So you have to coordinate. They have an office in San Francisco, they're in Osaka, now we're in Miami, and they're in New York. What time slot during the day do we communicate? And the people have to be available. So, I have this new product I want to use with our glaucoma device, and as an innovator, I can't sit still. So, I've already started the animal work, and I'll probably have it developed before they ever meet. Now, I did leak out that I started the animal work, and it was, you didn't get the signatures. Well, I know they can't fire me because they want me there for 3 years as part of my state contract. So in a way, the bigger company could be, a little problematic for the innovator who can't sit still. But let me tell you something else that's not very well known. And the question is, why aren't the big companies innovating? And one of the subtle reasons, which I found out from one of my partners who ran a Fortune 500 company, is he said it's really quite simple. In biotech, medical device, pharma, it can take 15 years to get a product out. So the tenure of a CEO is maybe 6 years. So the CEO is not going to start something that he won't be there to reap the benefits of it. That's part one. Part two, they get these fantastic bonuses, and the bonuses are based upon the stock value and the P&L ratio, profit to loss ratio. But if they build up a large research department, their losses are greater and the P to L ratio is smaller. So they have no incentive to spend research money, on research, and they're not going to be around that long. However, if they purchase a company, they get the glory for that. It doesn't come out of their P&L budget. It comes out of their merger and acquisition budget. So it doesn't show up on their general ledger. So these subtleties are one of the reasons why they'd rather buy companies than do their own R&D.
I don't know that I totally agree with that. I would say there that the sort of bureaucracy that you alluded to is very real. And I think that's actually the reason that you don't find the level of innovation in large corporations that you do in smaller companies. And actually most in the pharmaceutical industry, large pharmaceutical companies understand this, and they realize that what they bring to the table is that commercialization and launch machine. As there's been consolidation in the pharmaceutical industry, these companies have become such behemoths that they're unwieldy. Having done investor relations for a pharmaceutical company, I can say that even a CEO who knows his tenure isn't going to, extend beyond when something that's in development hits the market. Those companies are valued by investors based on their pipeline.
Right.
So they do care about the pipeline, even if the product isn't going to come out.
Rustam, you worked with big banks, big consulting companies, and now you work by yourself. What's it like? What's the difference between those two experiences?
So I mean, to be very candid, all these innovation centers that banks sets up is just in front, basically, just to get ideas from the ground and capture young people who have more energy than they have, and then at some point they put them onto some other division. That's how I ended up joining a bank. Uh, I think there's also inherently, it comes back to how innovation is taught and how it's grown. So we were a part. I can talk as an incubator in the early part of our journey. And I think the biggest value they added was that they let us do what we wanted to do, and which is what comes across in the lack of bureaucracy enables you can function. Because when you're innovating, you have to pivot a lot of times. And if you have the pressure of getting sign-offs or running, ensuring cash flow is regular, and you don't have the room to do that in necessary terms. So in a smaller organization, you can change your processes, you can change the people, you can change the mindset, which you can't in a bigger one. And I'm yet to come across any strong funding support which allows you to do that. So another big problem that happens is a lot of innovators in the beginning itself, they pick up a lot of VC money, and they get stuck to a kind of money that has a time period, like you mentioned, is much smaller than what an incubation needs to grow out. So in climate change, for example, just to take a step back, it's very difficult to innovate something on VC money because you can't have a 4 or 5 years terms to show something back, unless it's a very specific product solving a specific problem. So that's also sort of limits sort of the innovation. And so often enough, you find innovations are bootstrapped in nature. They grow up to a certain limit and then they hand it over.
Actually, when you said bootstrapped, it just kind of triggered something in me. Within large corporations, I've seen this happen at least twice in my experience, and I've heard it from a lot of other places. Oftentimes at the invention level, you literally have skunk works. So the person who's doing the science or the technology involved is doing it on the sly. And then brings it forward. There's an optimal size for the development of the invention. But then what it takes, particularly in highly regulated fields, whether it be banking, healthcare, et cetera, it takes a much larger organization to successfully commercialize it.